The twin suns were setting behind the jagged cliffs of Voron 6, painting the alien sky in deep red and gold. The marketplace below was loud and alive. Traders yelling prices, metal carts rattling over cracked stone, alien beasts snorting as their owners pulled them through the crowd. But near the center of the chaos, fear was spreading. A young alien mother stumbled forward, her hands gripping her little girl tight against her chest. The child was small, no more than 5, with thin arms wrapped around her mother's neck and wide silver eyes full of tears. Behind them, armored soldiers moved with heavy steps, their dark suits shining under the fading light. Their orders were clear: take the child. The mother turned suddenly, placing herself between her daughter and the soldiers. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "She's only 5. Please, take me instead." The crowd stopped to watch. No one spoke. No one moved. Everyone knew the rule: never interfere with the soldiers. Never question the orders. The lead soldier, tall and broad, didn't even slow down. "Stand aside," he barked, his voice flat under his mask. The mother shook her head desperately. "She's just a child. She's done nothing wrong." The soldier reached for the girl. The mother dropped to her knees, arms tightening around her daughter, her whole body trembling as she screamed, "Take me instead!" But the soldiers didn't care. Orders were orders. The little girl whimpered softly, too scared to cry now. And that was when the air changed. The crowd shifted as a man stepped out from the shadows of a nearby stall. He walked slowly, like he had all the time in the world, his long coat moving with the wind. His face was partly hidden beneath the hood, but his eyes, they caught the light. Cold, sharp, and unmistakably human. Human, here, on a planet where humans almost never came. The soldiers stopped for just a moment. The mother looked up, her breath catching. The man spoke softly, but his voice carried across the square like the roll of distant thunder. "Let the child go." The lead soldier turned his head. "And who are you to give orders here, human?" His voice was amused, but there was something tight in it now. The man didn't answer right away. His hand moved slightly, the edge of his coat lifting just enough to show the metallic curve of a device on his hip. It glowed faintly. The crowd saw it, and the whispers began. "Human tech," someone muttered. "Look at his belt. That's military grade," another voice whispered. The soldiers ignored the whispers. They started forward again. The man's voice was calm, almost too calm. "I said, let the child go." The mother stared at him, frozen. Why was he helping? Why risk angering the soldiers? The commander signaled his men. 2 soldiers raised their weapons. The man didn't move. He didn't even blink. The soldiers hesitated. There was something about him. Something in the way he stood, the way he looked at them, like a predator watching prey. The mother held her breath as the commander stepped closer. "This is none of your concern, human," the commander said coldly. "Walk away, and we will forget you were here." The man's reply was quiet, but every word carried steel. "You touch that child," he said, "and none of you leave this place alive." Silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. The soldiers stiffened. The crowd held its breath. And then, above them, shadows began to move across the sky. First, they looked like clouds. Then the setting sun glinted off metal. Ships. Huge, black, silent ships. They moved into position above the marketplace like wolves circling prey. No markings. No sound but the low hum of their engines. The soldiers looked up uneasily. The commander's grip tightened on his weapon. He was beginning to understand. This wasn't some wandering human trader. This man had ships waiting in the sky. Warships. The mother's heart pounded as she held her daughter tighter. Who was he? Why would a human bring this kind of power here? For them. The man raised his eyes to the commander, his voice like ice. "Let the child go." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. The crowd began to back away slowly, sensing what was about to happen. The mother felt her knees go weak. Hope fought its way into her fear for the first time. Something was changing. Something big. and the whole marketplace knew it. The marketplace was silent. Even the usual hum of engines and shouts of merchants had died away. All eyes were on the man in the dark coat, the lone human who had just threatened a squad of soldiers without raising his voice. The alien commander stared at him, jaw tight under his metal helmet. The man's words still hung in the air. "You touch that child, and none of you leave alive." The soldiers shifted uneasily, hands tightening on their weapons. They had fought rebels, pirates, even wild beasts on this planet. But this was different. This was a human. And humans were dangerous. The mother clutched her daughter close, not moving, not speaking. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Who was this man? Why was he helping them? The commander finally spoke, voice low and sharp. "Do you know what you're doing, human? Do you have any idea who we work for?" The man slowly lowered his hood, revealing his face. Weathered, scarred eyes like steel. Eyes that had seen too many battles. He looked at the commander without fear. "I know exactly who you work for," he said softly. "And I don't care." The soldiers bristled. One took a step forward, weapon raised. The man didn't even look at him. Instead, he lifted his left hand just slightly, and the device on his wrist lit up with a faint blue glow. The soldier froze, because everyone knew that glow. Human technology. Advanced. Deadly. The kind of weapon that didn't miss. The crowd began to murmur again. People leaned closer, whispering nervously. "Is he military?" Someone muttered. "No. The military doesn't send one man alone," another whispered. "Then what is he?" No one knew. The commander growled, trying to keep control. "This is your last warning, human. Walk away." The man's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a storm. "I don't walk away from children," he said. His words were simple, but the way he said them made even the commander hesitate. The mother stared at him, eyes wide. No one had ever spoken to the soldiers like this before. No one dared. The commander lifted his weapon slowly. "Then you die with them." The man tilted his head slightly. "No," he said softly. "You will." And then, for the first time, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile wolves give before they attack. Above, the black ships in the sky shifted slightly, like predators ready to strike. The soldiers looked up nervously. Their weapons were good, but those ships were better. The commander hesitated. He was trained for war, not for suicide. The man finally stepped closer, slow and steady, his coat brushing against the dust. He stopped only a few feet from the commander, eyes locked on him. "You have two choices," the man said quietly. "Let the child go, or see what happens when you don't." The words were like cold steel sliding into the air. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The commander's finger twitched on his weapon's trigger. The mother held her breath. The man didn't move. The ships above stayed silent, weapons glowing faintly now, like eyes watching the ground. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Finally, the commander spoke again, voice shaking just slightly. "Why?" he demanded. "Why risk your life for one alien child?" The man's answer was simple. "Because someone has to." The commander stared at him. He didn't understand. This wasn't how things worked. People didn't stand up to the soldiers. People didn't risk everything for strangers. But humans were different. The man's hand hovered near the device on his wrist. The soldiers didn't need to see it in action to know what it could do. Everyone had heard the stories. One man, one device, one command, and whole armies had disappeared. The mother could feel her daughter shaking against her chest. But she also felt something new in the air. Hope. The commander lowered his weapon slowly. He wasn't ready to admit defeat, but he also wasn't ready to die. "Stand down," he ordered his men finally. The soldiers hesitated, confused. "Sir?" one asked nervously. "I said, stand down," the commander snapped. The soldiers backed away slowly, weapons lowering. The crowd gasped softly. The man didn't smile this time. He simply turned to the mother. "Take your child," he said quietly. "Get her somewhere safe." The mother blinked, not moving at first. She couldn't believe it. The soldiers were actually stepping back. The commander was actually letting them go. But why? The man didn't explain. Not yet. He only watched as the mother, trembling, grabbed her daughter's hand and began to back away slowly, eyes never leaving the soldiers. The ships above stayed in position, silent and waiting. The man stayed too, his eyes cold, his posture calm. The message was clear. If the soldiers tried anything at all, the ground would burn before they even touched the girl again. And everyone knew it. The soldiers had stepped back, but no one in the marketplace moved. It was as if the whole world held its breath. The mother clutched her daughter tightly, slowly edging away, but her eyes never left the stranger, the human who had stopped an army with only his voice and the silent threat of ships in the sky. But the danger was not over. The commander was still there, his weapon lowered but not gone. His men stood behind him, confused and restless, waiting for orders. The black ships above hung like giant shadows, their weapons glowing faintly in the fading light. And in the center of it all, the human stood calm, his face unreadable, his hand still close to the device on his wrist. The commander finally spoke, his voice low but angry. "You think this is over, human? You think you can walk in here, make demands, and leave alive?" The man didn't answer. He didn't even look at the commander. His eyes scanned the soldiers instead, sharp and cold, as if he was measuring each one of them, counting them, judging them, already deciding who would die first if it came to a fight. The commander felt sweat gather under his helmet. He hated that this stranger made him feel small. The crowd kept their distance, whispering nervously. "Who is he?" someone muttered. "Why is a human here?" another whispered. "Did you see the ships? They're human ships. They have to be." The mother listened but didn't speak. Her heart pounded as she held her daughter close. Every instinct told her to run, but something else told her to stay. This human wasn't just a traveler. He wasn't here by accident, and she had a feeling he wasn't done yet. The commander finally stepped closer, trying to keep his voice steady. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said. "That child, she belongs to someone powerful, someone you don't want as an enemy." The man slowly turned his head toward him, eyes cold and sharp like knives. "I don't care who she belongs to," the man said softly. "She's a child, and no one takes children while I'm here." The words were simple, but they landed like a hammer. The commander's men shifted nervously again. Some glanced up at the silent ships, others at the stranger who stood so calmly in front of them, as if he was already certain of the outcome. The commander clenched his jaw. He couldn't back down in front of this crowd. His pride, his reputation, even his life depended on holding control. But there was something about this human that made every instinct scream danger. "Kill him," the commander snapped suddenly. The soldiers froze. They looked at each other. No one moved forward. "Did you hear me?" the commander shouted. "Kill him." Still no one moved, because above, the black ships began to glow brighter. Weapons were powering up. The air itself seemed to tighten, heavy with the promise of destruction. One soldier whispered, "Sir, if we attack, those ships will wipe out the whole market." The commander's mouth went dry, because deep down he knew it was true. The man's voice came again, calm but with a steel edge that cut through the air. "I gave you a choice," he said. "You make the wrong one, and this planet will remember it for the rest of its short life." Silence. The mother felt her knees weaken. She didn't understand who this human was, but she knew one thing. He wasn't bluffing. The commander stared at him, rage and fear twisting together inside his chest. He had fought rebels before. He had faced bounty hunters, pirates, even mercenaries. But this human was something else. Finally, the commander lowered his weapon fully. He knew when a battle was already lost. He signaled his men to stand down. The soldiers obeyed slowly, their eyes flicking nervously between the human, the ships, and their own commander. The man didn't move. He didn't relax. He simply waited, silent as the tension drained from the air like poison leaving a wound. The mother finally dared to speak, her voice trembling. Why are you helping us?" she asked softly. The man didn't answer right away. His eyes were still on the commander, making sure no one tried anything stupid. Then he spoke, his voice low but clear. "Because someone has to," he said. The mother didn't understand. Not yet, but she felt the weight in his words. This wasn't just about her child. This was about something bigger. Something the whole galaxy would soon feel. The soldiers had stepped back, but the tension in the air stayed heavy. The alien commander's face burned with anger under his metal helmet. He wanted to attack, but every instinct screamed that it would be suicide. Above, the black ships floated like silent predators, weapons glowing softly as if waiting for a single command. The mother still clutched her daughter tightly, her breathing fast, her heart pounding. The human stood between her and the soldiers, calm as stone, eyes scanning everything with sharp focus. For the first time, the soldiers looked afraid. The commander finally broke the silence. His voice was low but rough, filled with frustration. "You don't know what you're getting into, human. That child isn't ordinary. Do you even know who she is?" The man turned his head slowly toward him. His face didn't change. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I know exactly who she is." The crowd murmured softly. Even the mother froze, confused. How could he know? The commander narrowed his eyes. "Then you should also know the price on her head. Entire empires would kill for her bloodline. You can't protect her forever." The man's lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile. "They can try," he said softly. The soldiers shifted nervously again. There was something in the man's voice, something that made even the most fearless warrior hesitate. The mother stared at him. Questions burned in her chest. Who was this man? Why would he risk so much for a stranger's child? As if sensing her thoughts, the man finally turned to her. His eyes softened just slightly. "She carries royal blood," he said. "Half the galaxy wants her gone because she could unite the clans one day. They fear her future, so they want to erase it before it begins." The mother felt her breath catch. She knew her daughter's heritage was dangerous, but she hadn't known the truth reached this far. She had been running for months, hiding on this broken planet, hoping no one would find them. But someone always found them. Until now. The commander barked a bitter laugh. "You think you can protect her from the entire galaxy? One man." The man's eyes turned cold again. He glanced up at the sky where his ships waited. "I'm not one man." And then he raised his hand. The wrist device on his arm lit up bright blue. Above, the black ships moved instantly, forming a perfect attack circle over the market. Panels shifted, weapons powered up, the glow from their cannons painting the ground in red and gold light. The soldiers tensed, gripping their weapons tight. The crowd gasped and stumbled back, fear spreading like fire. The commander froze. His weapon hung useless in his hand. Because now he understood. These weren't merchant ships. These weren't smugglers or pirates. These were warships. Silent, deadly, human-built. The kind that appeared in whispered stories. Stories about places that no longer existed because someone had made the mistake of crossing the wrong human. The man lowered his hand slightly, but the ships stayed in attack position, ready to burn the entire square to ash if needed. His voice cut through the chaos, quiet but sharp as a blade. "I gave you a chance to walk away. Don't make me regret it." The commander's jaw clenched. He had fought rebels before. He had killed men who begged for mercy. But this human, this wasn't fear he felt. This was something worse. This was certainty. The certainty that if one wrong move was made, none of them would live to see the next sunrise. The soldiers backed away slowly. The commander growled but finally lowered his weapon. He could feel the eyes of the entire marketplace on him, watching him retreat. His pride burned, but his survival screamed louder. The man finally turned back to the mother. "Take your child," he said. "Get to my ship. Now." The mother hesitated only for a second before grabbing her daughter's hand. They began moving toward the edge of the market where the ships waited. The crowd parted silently, no one daring to stop them. As the mother passed the man, She looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. Why help us?" she whispered. The man didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed on the soldiers, making sure none of them moved. Finally, he said, "Because the galaxy thinks humans are just observers. That we stay out of their wars. That we don't interfere." He glanced at the commander, his voice dropping into something cold enough to freeze blood. "They forget what happens when we decide to act." And with that, he followed the mother toward the waiting ships, leaving the soldiers standing in silence, the weight of his words heavy in the air. The marketplace was still buzzing with whispers as the mother held her daughter's tiny hand and followed the human toward the landing area. The black ships above moved silently with them, like giant guardians blocking out the fading light of the twin suns. The soldiers didn't try to stop them now. Even the commander, who had shouted threats minutes ago, stood frozen, his pride bleeding away in silence. He hated the man, hated the way one human had made him and his whole squad look powerless. But he also knew one thing. If he gave the order to attack, none of them would live to regret it. The mother walked quickly, heart pounding, still half expecting a shot to come from behind. Her daughter clung to her arm, quiet but trembling. For so long they had run from one hiding place to another, never safe for more than a few days. And now, this stranger had turned the entire balance of power upside down in a single moment. Who was he? And why them? She had so many questions but no courage to ask them yet. The human walked ahead, silent, his long coat moving with the wind. He never looked back at the soldiers, never spoke to the frightened crowd. His eyes scanned the horizon instead, sharp and alert, as if danger could come from anywhere. And he was right, because danger was already coming. From the far side of the city, the roar of engines shook the air. The mother turned, fear flashing in her eyes. Over the rooftops, more ships were approaching fast, sleek, silver, carrying the mark of the mercenary guild that hunted them before. The little girl gasped and pressed herself against her mother's side. The human stopped walking. Slowly, he looked over his shoulder at the new threat. The black ships above him shifted instantly, their weapons glowing brighter, engines humming louder. The marketplace screamed into motion. Aliens running for cover, merchants grabbing their goods, soldiers diving behind walls as the new fleet screamed toward the landing site. The mother grabbed her daughter, heart hammering. "They found us," she whispered in terror. The commander shouted orders to his men, his earlier defeat forgotten as the sky filled with enemies. But the human didn't move. He raised his wrist device slightly, and his voice came out calm and cold. "Open fire." The black ships obeyed instantly. The air exploded with sound as laser fire cut through the sky. The first wave of mercenary ships never made it past the city walls. Fire bloomed in the clouds as smoking metal rained down. The ground shook under the blasts. The mother shielded her daughter, dust and heat swirling around them. The human never flinched. The second wave tried to break through, weaving between the tall towers. The black ships split apart like hunters circling prey, their weapons carving through metal and shields with deadly precision. One by one, the mercenary ships fell, crashing into the outskirts in balls of flame. The marketplace was chaos. People screaming, soldiers scattering, the sky alive with fire and death. But in the center of it all, the human stood calm, watching the battle like someone watching a storm he had called himself. The mother stared at him in disbelief. He wasn't just powerful. He was unstoppable. Within minutes, the sky was clear again. The mercenary fleet was gone. The black ships returned to silent formation above, engines humming softly as if nothing had happened. The commander of the soldiers stared at the human, his anger now mixed with something new, fear. Real fear. The man finally turned to the mother. "We move now," he said, "before more come." She nodded quickly, holding her daughter close as they ran the last stretch to the landing pad. The human ship waited there, sleek, black, unlike anything she had ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost alive, as if the metal itself was breathing. The ramp lowered with a hiss. The mother hesitated at the bottom, turning to look at the man. "Why us?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the sky again, always watching, always expecting more enemies. Finally, he said, "Because some things are worth saving, even in a galaxy this broken." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The mother led her daughter up the ramp. Inside, the ship was strange, walls glowing softly, controls unlike anything she had seen on alien crafts. Felt alive somehow, but safe. The human followed them in, the ramp closing behind him. Outside, the soldiers stayed back, unsure if following meant death. The commander clenched his fists but gave no orders. He knew better now. The ship's engines roared to life. The mother held her daughter tightly as the floor trembled beneath them. The human stood near the controls, his face calm, his eyes watching the horizon. As the ship lifted into the darkening sky, the mother realized something. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because whoever wanted her daughter dead would never stop coming. But now, they would have to go through him first. And judging by the firepower she had just seen, that wouldn't be easy. The engines of the human ship roared louder as it rose higher above the alien city. Below, the marketplace was only smoke and shadows now. The mother held her daughter close. Both of them pressed into a corner of the cabin as the floor vibrated under their feet. She had never been inside a ship like this before. The walls were dark metal with faint blue lines running through them, like veins carrying light instead of blood. The air smelled clean, almost too clean, like rain before a storm. The human stood at the front, hands moving across glowing controls. His face was calm, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning every reading on the screen. The mother didn't understand the symbols, but she knew one thing. He was expecting trouble. And he was right. On the radar, more enemy ships were coming fast. The mercenary guild wasn't done yet. The mother held her daughter tighter. The girl buried her face in her mother's chest, trembling. The human finally spoke, voice low but steady. "They'll be on us in 2 minutes." The mother's heart sank. Can we escape?" The man didn't answer right away. His fingers flew across the controls, the ship tilting sharply as it cut through the clouds. "We'll find out," he said simply. The girl whimpered softly as the ship shook again. The mother closed her eyes for a moment, whispering to her child, "It's okay. He won't let them hurt us." She wanted to believe that. She had to believe that. But outside, the enemy ships were closing in fast. The first laser blast shot past them, bright red cutting through the night. The mother gasped. The human didn't even flinch. His voice stayed calm, but his eyes narrowed. "Hold on." The ship banked hard to the left, throwing the mother and child against the wall. Another blast lit the sky behind them. The enemy fleet was faster than the one before. Sleek silver ships, weapons glowing bright, moving like predators chasing prey. The human's fingers moved faster across the controls. The black escort ships above them turned sharply, weapons powering up again. And then the sky exploded. Lasers crisscrossed the darkness, red and blue fire lighting up the clouds as the two fleets clashed. The sound was deafening, a storm of engines and weapons shaking the air. The mother held her daughter's head against her shoulder, shielding her eyes from the flashes of light outside the windows. But the girl peeked anyway, tiny fingers gripping her mother's sleeve. Her eyes were wide with both fear and wonder as she watched the black ships fight for them. One enemy ship broke through the chaos, diving straight at them. The mother's breath caught in her throat. But the human was faster. He hit one control and the ship spun sharply. A cannon unfolded from its side and fired once. The enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire before it even reached them. The little girl gasped softly, hiding her face again. The mother stared at the man at the controls. He was too calm, too precise, like he had done this before, many times. But why? Why risk so much for her child? Another blast shook the ship. Alarms beeped loudly as enemy fire hit one of the black escort ships above. It spiraled out of formation, smoking, before crashing into the desert below. The human's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. Instead, he pressed another control. The black ships regrouped instantly, forming a shield around them as the human's ship shot upward, climbing higher into the sky. The enemy fleet tried to follow, but the human was ready. He slammed one final control. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. The battle vanished behind them in an instant. Silence filled the cabin except for the soft hum of the engines. The mother slowly opened her eyes, realizing the shaking had stopped. They had escaped. For now. She held her daughter close, heart still pounding. The girl was shaking but safe. The human finally stepped away from the controls. "We're clear," he said simply. The mother looked at him with wide eyes. "They'll come again, won't they?" He nodded once. "Yes, they won't stop." The mother swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" The man looked out at the stars rushing past the windows. "We make sure next time. They regret coming." There was no anger in his voice, no threat, just quiet certainty. The mother felt a chill run through her, because she believed him, and so would the galaxy very soon. The stars outside the windows looked like silver rain as the ship cut through space at impossible speed. The battle, the flames, the screams from the city, they were already far behind. But the mother's heart was still racing. She sat on one of the metal benches inside the ship, holding her daughter tight against her chest. The child had finally stopped shaking, though her small hands still clung to her mother's clothes like she was afraid to let go. Across the cabin, the human stood near the controls, silent as always. His back was straight, his shoulders calm, like this was just another mission for him, like saving them had cost him nothing. But the mother knew better. No one fought mercenaries. No one challenged the guild. People who tried never lived to tell the story. So why had he done it? Finally, when the silence felt too heavy, she spoke. "Why us?" Her voice was low, careful, like she was afraid to break the air between them. The man didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the stars, watching them rush past. Then he said, "Because your daughter is more than they told you." The mother frowned. They said she carries royal blood. That's why they want her dead." The man turned slowly, his face unreadable. "Not just royal," he said softly. "Something more." The mother tightened her arms around the girl. "What do you mean?" The man stepped closer. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor, but his voice stayed low and calm. "She's the last one," he said. "The last child of the old bloodlines. If she lives, one day she can unite the clans. End the wars. Bring peace." The mother felt her chest tighten. She looked down at her daughter, who blinked up at the man with wide silver eyes. "She's only 5, the mother whispered. "She doesn't even understand." The man nodded slowly. "That's why they want her gone before she grows," he said. "Before the galaxy knows what she really is." The mother felt her hands tremble. She had always known her child was special. But peace? Uniting the clans? Ending wars? That was too big, too dangerous. She looked back at the man. "Why would a human care?" she asked quietly. "This isn't your war. It's not your world." The man's face changed just slightly. A shadow passed through his eyes, like he remembered things he didn't want to remember. Finally, he said, "Because humans learned something a long time ago. Wars like this, they spread. Sooner or later, they reach every planet, even Earth." The mother stayed quiet, listening. The man looked down at the little girl. "And because," he added softly, "my people don't wait for monsters to come to us. We stop them first." There was no anger in his voice, no heat, just cold certainty like he was stating a fact. The mother swallowed hard. For the first time, she realized this man wasn't just some lone traveler with a ship. He was part of something bigger, something the galaxy didn't understand yet. She wanted to ask more, but the ship beeped softly. A voice came through the speakers, calm and mechanical. "Approaching safe zone. No enemy ships detected." The man turned back to the controls. "Good," he muttered. "We need repairs and supplies before the next wave comes." The mother frowned. "Next wave." The man looked at her. "They won't stop," he said simply. "The guild, The warlords, the ones who paid for her death. They'll keep coming. The mother's arms tightened around her daughter again. Then what do we do? She asked softly. The man's eyes stayed on the stars. We make them afraid, he said. The mother felt a chill. Afraid of you? The man shook his head slowly. Afraid of us, he said. The mother blinked. Us? The man finally turned to face her fully. You think I came here alone? He asked quietly. You saw the ships above the city. And there are more. Many more. His voice dropped lower, almost like a promise. The galaxy thinks humans stay quiet, that we keep to ourselves, that we don't interfere in their wars. His eyes grew cold. They're about to find out how wrong they are. The mother didn't speak. She didn't have to, because deep down, she knew the truth. The galaxy would come for her daughter. But now, the galaxy would have to go through the humans first. And after what she had seen tonight, she wasn't sure the galaxy was ready for that. The little girl looked up at the man, her voice small but steady. Are we safe now? She asked. The man looked at her for a long moment. Finally, he said softly, for now. But one day you'll have to be more than safe. You'll have to lead. The girl didn't understand. Not yet. But the mother did. And as the ship vanished into the endless dark, she realized the galaxy had just changed forever.